Nice to see you all. My name is Sivan, and today on Eye on Israel, we have Snir Dagan, which is a Shaliach in St. Louis, the Shaliach in St. Louis, and Snir is going to talk about the drug smuggling to Israel. So, Snir?
That's it, starting?
Yeah.
All right. So, shalom everyone. My name is Snir Dagan. I am the J Shaliach here at the JCC at the Jewish Community Center in St. Louis. I've been here for 6 months, and I arrived here right from my Army service, which was all about drug enforcement and drug smuggling, preventing drug smuggling from the Egyptian border or the Jordanian border from into Israel. So let's just go ahead and start. All right, so my family lives in the Arava, which you can see on the bottom left of the presentation. This is the Israeli desert, and I've been living there my whole life. I like traveling and seeing all the new places I can find because the Arava, the Negev, the Israeli desert, is a wonderful place. It's just amazing. And I have 2 younger brothers and 1 younger sister. You can see them on the bottom, on the top right of the presentation. And I already did a Shnat Sharut, which is a year of service. So I was a Shinshin, which is a Shnat Sharut, a gap year Shaliach, right here at in St. Louis. I did that in 2018 until 2019. And then I drafted to the Army. I went through commander course, which you can see on the top left of the page. And then I arrived here in St. Louis. All right, moving on. So before we begin explaining everything and talking about all the interesting stuff my battalion and the Army in general does to prevent drug smuggling into Israel, we're gonna go into what we call dry definitions. So, all right, so the first one is havracha, which is literally smuggling, which is the act of transportation of legal drugs past the Egyptian border into Israeli territory. This happens usually every night, maybe every other night on the Egyptian border, and on the Jordanian border every week or every other week. So obviously on the Egyptian border it happens quite often, and on the Jordanian border it happens, as I said, every week or every other week. All right, thwarting, sikul, the complete disruption of attempted smuggling, which includes the confiscation of the drugs, as well as the capture and imprisonment of the smugglers. So sikul means basically catching the drugs and the smugglers and bringing them to trial inside of Israel, although they are not Israeli citizens. Which means it's a very long process because they are obviously not citizens of the state, but they did something that isn't illegal according to Israeli law, pretty much like here where you see the Mexican cartel trying to smuggle drugs into the US and they come to trial here in the US. All right, moving on to the next one, we got disruption, which is the seizure and confiscation of some or all of the smuggled drugs. So basically what it means, we catch some of the drugs or none of it and only catch the smugglers, or we catch just the smugglers and none of the drugs. We got a golden shibush. This is how we call it in the army language, which is catching the drugs and some of the smugglers. And we got partial shibush, which is catching some of the drugs and none of the smugglers. Any questions so far? All right, awesome. Moving on. All right, so here we got some numbers for you. So as we can see, we have here the map of Israel and where we see the smuggling taking place. So we have obviously most of the eastern northern border right here on the Egyptian border. Mostly, as we can see, it's on the Judea and Samaria parts of the territory, right here in the northeast part. Also some in the north, but not many. By the way, here, it's not smuggling drugs, that's weapons and firearms moving into and out of Israel, which we do not take part in. That's we call it the big armies responsibility. So it might be Nachal, Givati, Tzanchanim, paratroopers, or special units. Right here in the southwest border, we have Egypt on our border, and this is where I took part. This is where my service started and ended. Also, we can see here on the right of the page, so the white part is sikulim, what we saw earlier. The orange part is shibush, what we said is disruption. And this is the actual smuggling. So we can see the numbers going down throughout the years because the army is doing a quite good job at that. So as we can see from 2019 until 2022, we have 350 disruptions, and in 2022, this number jumps to 500. That's almost double the times. So yeah, this is the number right here. All right, so here's some other data. So average amount of drugs smuggled is 5.8 bags. Every bag weighs around 45 pounds, which is a lot of drugs. That comes out to probably less than 300 pounds every time coming in and out of Israel, which is a big number. Estimated amount of drugs smuggled in 1 year, it's 33 tons, which is really a lot. Usually drugs are on this border, as I said. It comes all the way from the Gaza perimeter all the way into Eilat right here in the north. Yeah, so that's it. It goes through this line of the Egyptian-Israeli border. As you can see, it's everywhere. There is no favorite place for the smugglers. There is no place they smuggle more, smuggle less. It's literally all over the place. So that is it. Total value of the drugs smuggled is $554 million in a year. This is throughout 1 year, 365 days. That's $554 million. Number of failures. Failures is shibushim, what we see in the orange right here. Sorry, in the white right here below, it's 18 in a year. That's the average. So 30 in 2019, 60 in 2020, 60 also in 2021, and 75 in 2022. Failures, it's not because they're failing, it's because we defend the border and we are confiscating them. Yes. All right. Estimated value of the drugs we caught, and actually the people we brought into trial, the value of these drugs is $5,854,000. So yeah, that is it for the number of sorry, of thwarting we did, as you can see in here. All right, so moving on. All right, so a little bit about my service. I was a combat sergeant, sorry, in a mixed battalion. That means boys and girls serve together, men and women serve together in the same battalion. I started in November 2019. I drafted right into the what we call Bardelas, which is in Hebrew is cheetah, the animal cheetah battalion. So I did my basic training in November 2019, finished this in January of 2020, and went right into the tactical driving course and the commander's course, in which I completed and got my ranks. I ended my service as a staff sergeant, Samal Rishon in Hebrew. And I was the commander of these beautiful soldiers. These are not all of them, it's 16 of them, tactical drivers. So their position is to basically drive the vehicles as we move into the smuggling area, sorry. So basically what they do is they are in charge of keeping the vehicle clean, working, not maintenance, that's another battalion that is taken care of, but they're in charge of any immediate response to any malfunction in the vehicle whatsoever. So they go through a different bunch of courses, and they go through a driving course, obviously, not the citizen driving course like the regular everyone is going through, but one special for the army. So they drive in the dark, and they drive with not many sleep hours, and they drive in hard conditions such as snow, mud, also in the rain. So this is what they do. My position was to be in charge of their well-being, and in charge of their missions, and in charge of their needs. If someone needs to go home to visit their parents, if someone needs to go home to he has some things he has to work out at home, so I'm in charge of letting him go and replacing him, or making sure someone is replacing him. I was in charge of being I also needed to be in charge of being responsible for their available for them and responsible for them. Yeah, that's it. All right, so as you can see on the bottom right,
Yeah.
Ken.
Yes, sir. We have a few questions.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So, we had a question about, does the drug are being made in Egypt or Jordan, or in a different place?
So yes, the drugs are being made in Egypt and are being shipped into Israel. They're being used usually by the Bedouin communities that live around this area, southern Israel, around Beersheba, around Sderot, around right here. And yes, they're being used in these areas and are being sold to citizens all across Israel, from Tel Aviv to Haifa to Jerusalem. We see traces of the drugs that we can't disrupt all over Israel, from the north to the south, west to east, all over. But the drugs themselves are being made outside of Israel, in Egypt, either, or in Jordan. Yes.
And what is the majority? What kind of drugs are we talking about?
So we'll get right to that, but usually we see hashish, which is a different type of marijuana. Sometimes we see weed farms inside of Israel, but that's not really the case. And also we saw one time cocaine and methamphetamine.
Okay,
Yes.
and Marlene had a question as well She asked if there is a fence, and if there will be a fence between the border, will it reduce the amount of smuggling?
So yes, the history of the place, wait, okay, so as you can see on the bottom, this is the fence. It's 10 feet high and probably 3 inches wide. It's a big fence. At some of this, some of the parts, it's electrocuted. It happened in 2012, right after the terror attack in Ene Tafim. So Ene Tafim was a terror attack happened in 2012, where ISIS groups tried and succeeded bombing an Egged bus, resulting in the death of 2 IDF officers and 7 more civilians. So this happened in 2011, sorry, not 2012. And right after this, Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister at the time, decided to establish this fence, and we call it Shaon Chol, which is, help me with that, Sivan, do you know what the translation of Shaon Chol?
No, but I can ask. Sand, like, you know, when you have the sand and you turn it.
Oh, hourglass.
Hourglass, exactly. Thank you. So yeah, the fence is called Hourglass, because it's actually, no pun intended, it's just a matter of time until the next smuggling happens. So this is called an hourglass fence. Yeah, that is it for the history of the fence. Thank you for the question.
And another one, Snir.
Yes. Go, if you have questions, just stop me. I'm ready to answer any question. Yes.
Right. So we wanted to ask, are they also smuggling the drug to the Gaza border between Egypt to Gaza?
Right. So no, they do not. Gaza make their own drugs. But they are cooperating. So Hamas, which sits right here, is cooperating with ISIS, who sits on the northwest border of Egypt with the ocean, is cooperating with Hamas, and they're together working on smuggling the drugs. So for example, as you can see right here on the top where the Gaza perimeter starts, there are no smugglings because the Hamas interrupts the IDF, and they decide not to get into this because they're already busy with Hamas and Gaza on the border. So smuggling already happens everywhere south of that. So no, Gaza does not make their own drugs.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yes, but you know what I'll ask now? We wanted to know, you answered it briefly, but the main consumers in Israel of those drugs are Bedouins, as you said. But
Yes.
like, is other kind, like, of population in Israel do use those drugs, consume them?
So not really. I mean, most drug consumers, as you said, are the Bedouin community who lives right here in the south. The thing is, as farther the drugs get into Israel, the easier it will be to catch the consumers and the drugs itself. So it only gets into like the south area of Israel, because if it will even be in Tel Aviv or Rehovot, for example, which sits right here, it'll be easier for the police and the IDF to catch the drugs. So no, most drugs that are being consumed in the central part of Israel are being brought from the Judea and Samaria parts of Israel, where other IDF battalions, are being responsible for that. So the drugs, my battalion is in charge of catching, and the smugglers that are being brought to trial by us are all stationed here in the south of Israel. All right. Any other questions? Awesome. All right. Moving on. So as I said, I was a combat sergeant in charge of these beautiful soldiers, and I was in charge of.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Karen asked if, is there any talk about decriminalization of the drugs?
No, not really. Just what we call samim kalim, which is soft drugs, which is marijuana and other drugs, are being now decriminalized in Israel, but hashish, cocaine, methamphetamine, they're all still illegal in Israel, and everyone who used them or smuggled them or consumes them is being brought to trial by the Israeli police, IDF, not by the Israeli police, not by the IDF. Sorry, yes. All right. So yes, my battalion's mission. As you can see in all these photos, first of all, on the top right of the photo, these are the vehicles we use. They're called Humvee. By the way, they were shipped into Israel by the American military. These are old Humvees. The American military doesn't want anymore, so we got all the scrapes. And we are in charge of maintenance and keeping them clean and keep them running. And we mount machine guns on the top in case of a shooting fight, actually on the border where we saw earlier at Shaon Chol, hourglass fence. Also during the COVID-19 pandemic, where it first hit Israel, this is the picture you see in the middle. We were in charge of blocking roadways and major cities because of the curfew we had. Sorry, lockdown, not curfew. So yeah, we were in charge of enforcing the lockdown and keeping everyone safe and distance in their homes. This was our mission for only 5 months, from March 20th until August 20th. And then it was taken over by the Israeli police because Operation Guardians of the Walls, as you can recall, happened right at this time through May of 2021. So they drafted everyone back into the army. All right, so now for the story. As you can see on the bottom of the screen, we see on the right side, we see the smugglers. They're actually Egyptian Bedouins who we caught using the drugs and smuggling them. As you can see in the background, there is the Egyptian police van. This picture was taken actually in Egypt, not in Israel, because the Egyptian police helps us catching these smugglers. Some of them are actually ISIS terrorists. That means they identify as ISIS militia group's soldiers. So by the Israeli definition, they are called mechablim, terrorists. Not all of them, just some. And on the left side of the picture, you can see 300 pounds of cocaine lying on the ground. This is what they smuggled, and the tallest guy in the picture, that's me. We cover our faces. I mean, we take the pictures facing with the back facing to the camera because we publish it to the media. So they don't want to recognize us in the media. But I am freely talking about it because I was discharged of the army. We also face attempted breaching of the border fence. There's just as you asked about it. So Shaon Chol, hourglass fence, because it is honestly just a matter of time until someone else tries to breach it, smuggle drugs through it, and also harm Israeli civilians using the breaches in the fence. The picture on the top right, where you can see us running towards the chopper, this is after a very harsh car crash happened in Israel on Route 90, which is the longest road in Israel. It goes all the way from Metula to Elat, two of the northern and southern ends of Israel. Some of these parts, it's a one lane, two-sided roads. So it's only one lane to each side, each way, sorry. And it was a car crash, if I can remember correctly. It was a car crash between a truck and a civilian car with the family inside, coming back from a vacation in Eilat, which is like the Israeli Miami. So yeah, we took care of that. We evacuated the injured. We took the cars off the road, and this is us working with Maglan. Sorry, 669, which is the Israeli emergency response. Sorry, the IDF emergency response unit, which responds to disasters and car crashes and hostage situation in Israel. Yes, so this is what everything we are doing in my battalions. All right, let's see a picture and see how it looks when the smugglers are coming into the border. All right, so as you can see, this is the desert. This is the Egyptian desert. As you can see here, this is all the smugglers with the bags on their backs, and they're marching towards the fence, which is right here. This is the Israeli road, and this is the fence right here. This is, by the way, unless the drugs are being caught, it is all classified, so that the Egyptians don't understand where we can watch them. These are called dead spots. Yes, so that's it. Now they're passing the drugs through the fence, and we caught
Can we ask a question?
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
So how did they manage to coordinate the drug being picked up in the Israeli border from the smugglers?
Right. So they have one-time use cell phones in each border, and they use it so the Israeli police or the IDF can't track it. And they call and they say three things: the time, the date, and where are we meeting? Because everything else has been transported already, like the time, the amount of drugs we're passing, who is passing, like what type of drugs are we passing. They only say the time, the date, and where are we meeting, and that's it. They just wait. They wait there. Sometimes it can be hours, sometimes it can be days, sometimes weeks. They just sit there and they wait for the right time to show up from both sides. And we try to do basically the same thing. We wait and we wait and we wait. And sometimes we can ambush them. This results in a successful cut of the drugs. And sometimes we can't.
Mm-hmm. And what Israel does with the drug that she confiscated?
All right, so usually if it's cocaine, we burn it down. If it's hashish, Israeli farmers love to use that as they put it in the I don't think that's the right form, but the irrigation system, and that makes the flowers flourish or something like that. We pass it to Israeli farmers. We do know they're not going to use it for recreational use. But they make some use of it. Weed we also just burn. We burn it down.
Okay. And another question that we were asking, when you caught the drug smugglers, so obviously Israel cannot, the capacity is limited in Israel in jails.
Right.
So oh my gosh, are they going back to Egypt or Jordan?
Right. So the process with them is they're being brought to trial in Israel. Their punishment is Israeli, but they're being put in an Egyptian jail, because in jail they have places for them, which we do not obviously have in Israel. That's a good question. Thank you. Yeah, but the trial is happening in Israel. The penalty is Israeli penalty, but they're being put in Israeli prisons. And sorry, in Egyptian prisons. Any other questions? All right. Awesome. So this was everything. Thank you so much. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out either to me or reach out to Sivan and she can contact you directly to me. Thank you so much for listening and paying attention.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for participating. And yeah.
Bye.
רגע תישאר. אני מוציאה את כולם.